dear friends and my dear viewers, I welcome you all to my this YouTube channel called Phoenix English. Friends, as you know, this channel is dedicated to English language learners and literature learners especially. Friends, now I have come up with this video tutorial for you. This tutorial is going to elaborate major types of Elizabethan poetry. As you might have seen my earlier videos, I have made three videos that you might have seen on earlier Elizabethan period, Elizabethan poetry, characteristics of Elizabethan poetry, and this is the new video. In order to understand properly Elizabethan poetry, you will have to go through this video tutorial, because this video tutorial is going to elaborate, explain, illustrate in details the major types of Elizabethan poetry. As you all know, Elizabethan period is known as the golden period in history of English literature, and so the major types in those days, how were the major types of poems, what were the major types of poems, those types of poems here in this tutorial I am going to elaborate in details, such as you might be knowing in Elizabethan poetry there were many types of poems such as sonnets, elegy, pastoral elegy, then songs, lyrics. So these are all forms they used to know as Elizabethan songs, Elizabethan lyrics, Elizabethan sonnets, and pastoral elegy, religious and epic poetry. So let us see in this tutorial once again in details these major types of Elizabethan poetry. So let us see. So friends, now we are going to see the first basic type of Elizabethan poetry, the major type, Elizabethan lyric. The Elizabethan lyrical poetry is the glory of the age. It produced many beautiful lyrics. Sweet songs were written and published during this period. So the age is called the nest of singing birds. See, keep in mind, the age, because of lyrics, Elizabethan age is also called as the nest of singing birds. Love was the chief theme of lyrics, which was expressed in various ways. One of the finest lyricists of the age was Sir Philip Sidney. Sir Philip Sidney was the most important or finest lyricist of the age. He was a courtier, soldier, and a poet. His Astrophel and Stella was the most famous lyric, Elizabethan lyric. His famous book of sonnets is Astrophel and Stella. It was published after his death. Another great poet of this age was Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh was the another famous poet, a great poet. He was also a soldier, courtier, and a poet. His poetry is known for the plain style. Shortness was one of the characteristics of his poem. Most of his poems are short lyrics. They were inspired by actual events. His lyrics have the themes like love, loss, beauty, and time. What is our life is his famous lyric. Some examples of Elizabethan lyrics can be found in Shakespeare's plays also. Now we are moving towards the most significant and important major form of Elizabethan poetry is Elizabethan sonnets. Elizabethan sonnets. The Elizabethan sonnet made the Elizabethan poetry rich and vivid. The sonnet was born in Italy. Petrarch introduced sonnets in Italy. So Petrarch was one of the Italian poet of sonnetiers. Petrarch introduced sonnets in Italy. Thomas Watt and Surrey, they brought this form into England. Watt and Surrey brought this typical form of poem into England. They introduced sonnets to English literature. The famous poet Thomas Watson made some experiments in the sonnet form. Earlier, the sonnet was written in 18, 15, or 12 lines. The rhyme scheme depended on the wish of the poet. Wish of the poet. During the period of Sydney, sonnet was written in 14 lines. 14 lines started by Sydney. Written in iambic meter, most of the sonnetiers followed Italian or Petrarchan method, separating lines into two groups as 8 lines and 6 lines. So 8 lines called octave and 6 lines called sestet. But Shakespeare divided it into 3 groups. Shakespeare divided into 3 groups this form. 4 lines in each group. 4 lines in each group. He also introduced a final couplet of 2 lines. Couplet of 2 lines. The rhyme scheme was varied. Sir Philip Sidney, Edmund Spenser, and William Shakespeare are the well-known sonnetiers of the Elizabethan era. Now we are moving towards next type of Elizabethan poetry, that is songs. It is also known as Elizabethan songs. A song became very popular in the Elizabethan age, a very popular form of Elizabethan poetry. The court of the Elizabeth is called a nest of singing birds. Nest of singing birds. Even Shakespeare wrote many beautiful songs for his plays. The Elizabethan age witnessed many kinds of songs as love songs, religious songs, patriotic songs, war songs, and philosophical songs. These are the types of, or one more, philosophical songs. They carried every mood, grave, romantic, sentimental, mocking, etc. Love is the main theme of Elizabethan songs. Love was the main theme of Elizabethan songs. The other themes of songs are joy, sorrow, praise of wine, childhood, and nature. Sidney wrote many songs. Sir Philip Sidney wrote many songs. They express passion, beauty, romance, and fancy. They have loftiness and superb musical quality. Sidney's famous songs are Only Joy, Now Here You Are, and Rings Out Your Bell. Shakespeare wrote many beautiful songs for his comedies and romances. For comedies and for romances, Shakespeare wrote many beautiful songs. His songs are spontaneous, fresh, and they carry rustic realism. Some of his songs express the touching feeling of love. Shakespeare has inserted songs in his famous comedy As You Like It. His contemporary dramatists also wrote songs for their plays. Thomas Dekker and Ben Jonson's plays have lovely songs. Thomas Campion wrote attractive songs and lyrics. His famous collections of songs are Two Books of Airs and Songs of Mourning. They are very famous for high musical quality. Thus, a song is very popular form of poetry. Lord Byron's She Walks in Beauty and Tennyson's Tears Idle tears are perfect examples of songs. Though they deal with a different mood, even Donne has written songs. His Go and Catch the Falling Star is a very famous song. And now, the next major type of Elizabethan poetry was pastoral poetry. See, pastoral poetry, it is one of the major form of elegy. This is one more form of elegy. It is known as pastoral elegy. It is very famous form of the elegy. In this type of elegy, the poet is expected to speak as a shepherd. He weeps over the death of his fellow shepherd. Rustic life is the significant theme. The setting is in pastoral poetry is rustic life. And the poets use the images like sheep, shepherds, flowers, and rustic life in order to make attractive and make more beautiful this form of elegy. Pastoral poetry became popular in the Elizabethan era. Spenser's most famous Shepherd's Calendar is the famous pastoral poem. Shepherd's Calendar is Spenser's the most famous form of elegy or pastoral poem. It became popular in Elizabethan era. Shakespeare also wrote pastoral poetry. Most of this type of poetry of this period is romantic by nature. And now the next important form, which is called as satire. Satire grew and flourished in the Elizabethan era. Spenser's Mother Hubbard's Tale is the best example of satirical poem. But John Donne is the most famous important poet of satire. He wrote the satire of classical type. His satires are serious and they are criticism of life. Of the Progress of the Soul is an example of memorable satire. Humor, wit, and ironical descriptions have made his satires classical. Joseph Hall and Joseph Marston are also important satirical poets of the Elizabethan age. So this is how we have seen satire. John Donne was the famous poet of satire. Now we will see the last form of Elizabethan poetry called religious and epic poetry. During the Elizabethan age, religious and epic poetry flourished a lot. Robert Southwell wrote religious poetry. Robert Southwell. Keep in mind that the name of the poet, Robert Southwell, for religious and epic poetry. His St. Peter's Complaint is a famous religious poem. And then Edmund Spenser wrote romantic epic Fairy Queen. Epic Fairy Queen is also one of the ideal example of epic poetry. Spenser's The Fairy Queen. It was the first romantic epic of Spenser, but that is in epic form and it is incomplete. It was the first romantic epic, but as an epic it is incomplete. The poetry is rich, vivid, beautiful and natural. The poetry witnessed its golden period in this age, as we have already seen. The Elizabethan songs and lyrics are very famous even today also. They are source of joy for the lovers of poetry. The Elizabethan poetry was thus rich in its expressions. So friends, I hope you will understand these major types of poems. Till then, Thank you. We will meet in next tutorial on metaphysical poetry. Till then, thank you. Stay home and stay safe. Thank you.